Hey friends, welcome back to another video. My name's Lefebvre, and last week I shared a video where I was feeling very anxious and unmotivated to paint and was having a real struggle with my creativity. So I showed you how I combat that by just throwing paint on paper. And actually what that did was spark something else in me that inspired me to paint something new. So today we're going to be painting some dandelions, which is actually so much fun to paint. And that is all thanks to experimenting and throwing paint on paper when I was feeling unmotivated. So let's jump in and get started. Okay friends, so last week you may have seen my video where I expressed how I was feeling very anxious and unmotivated to paint, and one of the ways I like to combat that is to just throw paint on paper. That was one of my tips, and this is what I created. And the whole point is not to necessarily create something that's a masterpiece or something that you feel worthy of giving to someone or selling, or just even showing anyone. Just putting paint on paper, picking colors that make you feel happy, and just releasing the pressure of it being perfect. And then once you're done, it may have worked out, it may not have. I want you to try and find something in your piece that you liked. And while I feel like I didn't really work on a composition with this piece, my favorite part of it, which I also wrote down here, were the dandelions. And then it kind of brought me back to my son, my youngest son, Miles, right now, who's obsessed with picking dandelions. He thinks they are the most beautiful flowers. And I really enjoyed painting these. And that has sparked something in me to want to just paint and do like a dandelion study. So I was going to do it in the video where I did this. The dandelions were closed all up on my lawn because it was super cold, but they have now opened and I went and picked a bunch, and that is what I want to paint today. So this exercise was to show you how to kind of get that motivation, get that spark going by just releasing the pressure of it being perfect or, something you might deem as worthy, and just paint to paint. The other tip that I had for the people who feel unmotivated and don't know what to paint is to pick something small to focus on. And this also kind of ties in with that. Pick a simple little flower or a leaf or an item on your desk and focus on just painting or drawing or sketching that in many different ways. And that's another way that I kind of like to get the creativity flowing when I don't know what to paint or I don't feel motivated. My biggest tip though is to make sure you are not putting pressure on yourself to create something spectacular just to create for the sake of creating. Okay, so with that said, I have picked a few different dandelions in different stages. One that's like fully closed, one that's like wide open, one that's like on its way of opening, so you can kind of see that center is still pretty closed, which is kind of cool. Tried to get as many leaves as I could with these. It wasn't working. I'd really have to go down to the root, which I was not about to do. So I just want to use these as references to really kind of look at dandelions from all angles. And I think that's a real benefit to having a flower or an object right in front of you, as opposed to, a reference photo. So if you can, and if you can't get your hands on, beautiful, gorgeous, expensive flowers, grab some weeds out of your yard and paint those. So that's what we're doing today. And I'm not going to come up with a composition. I'm simply just going to look at different shapes and see how I can recreate them on my page. So I like this one, how it's like wide open. And when I did do the dandelions on this painting, I used my flat brush. So that's what I'm going to do today. I do have my big flat brush that I used. And I also have, I have a smaller one. I have Sarah Burns flat brush, which might be really nice to use. I also have my smaller flat 1/4 inch flat, which might be great for this. And the reason why I like it is because it gives pretty like sharp, but also geometric kind of lines where they're a little bit flatter. If you look up close at the dandelion, the petals on it have this kind of flat edge, which is really, really nice. So I'm going to throw a bunch of my dandelions over here. Hope they don't die. And I think I want to start with a bigger one. So looking at this, I'm just looking at the colors and the shapes. I noticed that The yellow around the edge is a little bit of a cooler yellow than the yellow in the middle. So I have this lemon yellow, which is pretty close to that that cooler yellow on the outside, I might even just grab a tad bit of green. It just helps cool it down a little bit. And I'm going to use the corner of my brush, and I'm just going to do these little strokes kind of going around in a circle like this. The best I can. It's not going to be a perfect circle. And I'm just really like dabbing. You can even just like dab like this if you want to try that. It's all about experimenting and trying new things. I do want to make sure I'm leaving a little bit of white space in between some of the petals. But I'm also planning on adding some pencil maybe afterwards to just add a little bit of something else to it. Now I'm going to grab a little bit of my warmer yellow, which is just my yellow mixed with a tad bit of pink or red if you have that. And I'm just going to start doing the same kind of strokes going towards the middle. Okay, I'm going to grab a little bit more pink there to get it a little bit warmer. Like so. And it's pretty much all kind of, you know, blending together. You don't see too much separation, but we can also do that with another layer after, or pencils. Okay, so there's like a top-down view. I also want to take a look at it from the side. I am going to grab my smaller flat brush, I think, and see how that fares. So looking at this from the side, it's kind of like a half dome, which I want to try and recreate. So I'm going to grab the warmer yellow, and I'm just going to start with the little strokes on the top, really, really light. And then as they start to come out, they're going to start to come out at us as well. Hold on. Doing these little strokes. Now, obviously, you don't have to use a flat brush for this. You can use whatever brush you want. I'm going to have some of these petals kind of coming around like so. And it's just simple shapes that we're working on. Really, there's nothing much to it. I'm going to grab a bit more of my warmer yellow, kind of like that orange. Like so. Like that. Just trying to get these little petals. That's fun. All right, and then under that, you also see a bit of the green. So the green is kind of like this olivey color. Also has like little red tips on the edge of some of those little folds, which is kind of cool. I'm gonna just add little hints of green, and they're gonna bleed into it a little bit. Maybe I'm gonna grab my brown brush, I think, for this part. And I'm just gonna do these two connecting. Just very, very lightly. Light colored. Like so. There's a little bit of those kind of leaves and stuff underneath. Like that. Very cool. And now I kind of want to also add, even though it's not on this one, this kind of jagged leaf. So I'm going to grab my green. Just take a look at it. I mean, this one's pretty dead, but that's okay. I get the gist of it. And I'm just going to, actually a little bit of olive green, a little bit of my phthalo blue. Do a line down the middle, and then it's like a point at the top. And then they kind of come in and out. They're like these jagged leaves. And the best thing about painting something like this is, like, obviously it doesn't have to be perfect because the leaves are kind of jagged and dead and they don't have to be these perfect shapes. So just kind of embrace your shaky hand or whatever, like that. That's kind of cool. I like that. Maybe I'll do another one right here. I'm just using the tip to kind of come out and in. Might grab a little bit of like a darker green. My Perlene green or shadow green, as mine is. Just kind of tap it in there for a little bit of depth, like that. Okay, now I want to do some more with, I like this one, how it's a little bit more closed at the top. So again, I'm going to try like this. And I'm going to use the smaller brush. I have some of the color from the previous page kind of rubbed off. There we go. And I'm just going to, again, go around in a circle. Maybe you can even like just give yourself a guide if that helps. And I'm just going around like so with my lemony yellow. I want to grab a bit of green just to make it a little bit cooler. So a cool yellow will kind of have almost like a greenish undertone, and a warm yellow tends to have like an orange undertone. So just in case you're wondering what I'm going on about. Okay, I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to grab my warmer one. Just a little bit more in the center. And then I'm just going to kind of fill it in like that. And then we'll, again, do some more detail on it after. I do want to see a little bit more of the underside of these. I feel like they just look so cool. So I'm going to do just where I see. So here's like the base kind of, and I'm just going to do these little petals kind of coming up. Try and look at your subjects from all angles. Even if you don't get it, what you think is correct or anything like that, just start looking at objects at all different ways. Okay, so here's that, and then it's like this green underneath. You see a lot more of the green, and it's almost like there's the underside is these green petals. So I'm gonna do a little bulb, and then you have these little parts that are kind of coming, whoopsie, and curving downward, which again, we can do more of when it's dry. And we can add in those other bits like the details and stuff when it's dry too. I'm going to bring this down. Let's connect these two just for fun. Now a lot of the green is kind of going into my yellow here, which is okay. We can always fix that. Again, we can use our pencils over top. I feel like this stem is too big. Just lift it up. Make it a little bit thinner. There we go. Like so. And then I also want to do one that's like fully closed, which is interesting to look at. So I have this one. I'm going to go, I feel like I should bring it down a little bit more. I'm going to do this one, which is kind of like a cylinder shape almost. And then you see kind of these like spikes coming up. Then that's like a darker green. And add a little bit more blue to that green. And then you get that lighter kind of yellowy green with those parts that are kind of falling over down here. Like that. Then we have the stem. And then we have a little bit of this like yellow poking out the top. Like that. And again, that's gonna come with more detail as well. I want to do another one. I got this really tiny one here. where it's kind of just opened. So I want to do a little bit of this as well. I'm going to use my round brush. Actually, I'm going to use my smaller round brush, my size 2 for this. And I'm just going to do these little kind of spikes. It's like a water fountain almost. I don't know if you can see the sides, like a sprinkler. Like that. And then there's a lot of green under this one as well. I'm trying to drag it away a bit more so it doesn't bleed too much into it. And then those little bits that kind of fall over, the little, like that. Like that. And then you can just fill up your pages you like. So I'm going to do a couple more and then we'll come back right when I add in all my detail. Okay, so now that the first layer is done, I'm going to grab my smaller brush and I'm just going to do extra layers of some of these strokes over top, which is going to make quite the difference. So with this one, I'm just going to take my size 2 brush and I'm just going to use these little strokes, especially with my warmer yellow, right towards the center. And already you can kind of see it coming to life. Like that. And you can do a little bit more on some of the outer ones if you want, just to give it a bit more texture. But these are like some of the simplest flowers to do, or weeds, but they're so pretty. I see what my son loves about them. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to make these really thin because you kind of see the tops. And then as it comes towards us, they're going to come down. Like that. Same with these ones, just little tiny dots, especially closest to the center. If you actually look at the dandelion, it has these tiny little lines. I guess it's the stamen, maybe? I don't know. Should actually look at the anatomy of a dandelion and see what parts are which. Okay, I'm actually going to mix my green with a little bit of brown because those petals underneath are a little bit more on the brownish green side. Like that. And then the parts that have kind of come and fallen over a bit, they're also like a lightish brown kind of green. So I'm just going to do these little folds. Like that. And remember, they also have like almost like a little hint of pink at the edge of some of those folds. Like that. Okay, now this one, remember how it's pretty tightly closed. I'm going to take my warmer yellow, then right to the center, I'm just going to do little dots like this. So for this one. So a little cluster of dots right in the center. Like that. And then little tiny strokes going out. And then we get the bigger ones kind of coming out like this. And then we can even do a little bit more depth with this one after with pencil. The colored pencils is what I'm talking about, in case you're wondering. Okay. And then this little one here, you only see tiny little bits of yellow, but it's mostly like a brown, kind of all tightly wound together like this. And then the green, you see like individual lines. And even a little bit of that pinkish color at the top. Oops. And then these folded over pieces here. And then I'm just going to finish these ones with a little bit more detail. And then for the stems also, they have a little bit of like a pink to them. So even if you want to mix a little bit of pink with your green, they're not fully green. So some of them have like this brownish pink bit to them. Maybe even a bit more pink. Just very, very light. You can even wash off your brush and just kind of blend it out so it's not so harsh. Up to you. But let me just finish this, and then we're going to go back in one more time with pencil once it's dry and finish it off. Okay, so now that that's done, I'm going to grab like my yellow ochre kind of pencil. Just going to make sure it's nice and sharp. You can even grab an orange, and then you're just going to, like, I'm just going to do a little bit of extra shading. You can even do some extra petals if it feels a bit more, you know, easier to use a pencil like that. You can add a little bit more shading in the base here, just like little tiny bits of extra detail. It's totally up to you though. You can even grab an orange or a brown to really deepen it. You can kind of outline some petals if you like do just like little curves. Might grab like a darker peachy color. Do some little dots here with this. Or if you want to grab like your lemon yellow, like a bright, bright yellow, to get some of that vibrancy too. And just experiment and have fun. The one thing I want to use my pencils for sure is the greenery. So I'm going to do a little bit of extra, you know, outlining, maybe some texture, some shading. You know, just add a little bit of darkness under there. Because sometimes it's just a little bit easier with pencil. And I also just like the texture it provides on my drawings at times. You can use a little bit of a darker shade. You can even outline some of the leaves just for a little bit of extra detail there. Oops. And just be creative with it. So that's about it for this video. I hope that using, you know, something as simple as a weed from the grass outside can inspire you to create something that you enjoy. So just remember that when you are creating, it doesn't have to be a big masterpiece every time, or even most of the time. Just create to create. And if you can grab something that's like an actual object that's tangible that you can hold in your hands, look at from different angles, I find there's so much more value in that than looking at a reference photo. I mean, granted, it is hard sometimes to get our hands on some things like a beautiful landscape or a different flower, but if that's too overwhelming, just grab something small like this out of your garden and practice that way, because it will bring you joy and it's a lot more manageable to do rather than getting something that might be, expensive or just not something that's available to you. So have fun, enjoy the little things, and let me know how it goes. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on all my other platforms for tons more content. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.